Chapter 13. We hire a new guide. Hours later, my raft washed up at Camp Half-Blood. How I got there? I have no idea. At some point, the lake water just changed to salt water. The familiar shoreline of Long Island appeared up ahead, and a couple of friendly great white sharks surfaced and steered me toward the beach. When I landed, the camp seemed deserted. It was late afternoon, but the archery range was empty. The climbing wall poured lava and rumbled all by itself. Pavilion? Nothing. Cabins? All vacant. Then I noticed smoke rising from the amphitheater. Too early for a campfire, and I didn't figure they were roasting marshmallows. I ran toward it. Before I even got there, I heard Chiron making an announcement. When I realized what he was saying, I stopped in my tracks. "Assume he is dead," Chiron said. "After so long a silence, it is unlikely our prayers will be answered. I've asked his best surviving friend to do the final honors." I came up on the back of the amphitheater. Nobody noticed me. They were all looking forward, watching as Annabeth took a long green silk burial cloth, embroidered with a trident, and set it on flames. They were burning my shroud. Annabeth turned to face the audience. She looked terrible. Her eyes were puffy from crying, but she managed to say, "He was probably the bravest friend I ever had. Then she saw me. Her face went blood red. "He's right there!" Heads turned. People gasped. "Percy!" Beckendorf grinned. A bunch of other kids crowded around me and clapped me on the back. I heard a few curses from the Aries cabin, but Clarice just rolled her eyes, like she couldn't believe I had the nerve to survive. Chiron cantered over, and everyone made way for him. "Well," he said with obvious relief, "I don't believe I'd ever been happier to see Camper return. But you must tell me, where have you been?" Annabeth interrupted, shoving aside the other campers. I thought she was going to punch me, but instead she hugged me so fiercely she nearly cracked my ribs. The other campers fell silent. Annabeth seemed to realize she was making a scene and pushed me away. We thought you were dead, Seaweed Brain." "I'm sorry," I said. "I got lost." "Lost?" she yelled. 2 weeks, Percy? Where in the world—" "Annabeth," Chiron interrupted. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private, shall we? The rest of you, back to your normal activities." Without waiting for us to protest, he picked up Annabeth and me as easily as if we were kids, slung us both onto his back, and galloped off toward the big house. I didn't tell them the whole story. I couldn't bring myself to talk about Calypso. I explained how I caused the explosion at Mount St. Helens and got blasted out of the volcano. I told them I'd been marooned on an island. Then Hephaestus had found me and told me I could leave. A magic raft had carried me back to camp. All that was true, but as I said it, my palms felt sweaty. "You've been gone 2 weeks." Annabeth's voice was steadier now, but she still looked pretty shaken up. "When I heard the explosion, I thought, I know," I said. "I'm sorry, but I figured out how to get through the labyrinth. I talked to Hephaestus." "He told you the answer?" "Well, he sort of told me that I already knew, and I do. I understand now." I told them my idea. Annabeth's jaw dropped. "Percy, that's crazy!" Chiron sat back in his wheelchair and stroked his beard. "There is precedent, however. Theseus had the help of Ariadne. Harriet Tubman, daughter of Hermes, used many mortals on her underground railroad for just this reason." "But this is my quest," Annabeth said. "I need to lead it." Chiron looked uncomfortable. "My dear, it is your quest, but you need help." "And this is supposed to help? Please, it's wrong, it's cowardly, it's hard to admit we need mortals' help," I said, "but it's true." Annabeth glared at me. "You are the single most annoying person I have ever met." And she stormed out of the room. I stared at the doorway. I felt like hitting something. So much for being the bravest friend she had ever had. "She will calm down," Chiron promised. "She's jealous, my boy." "That's stupid. She's not, it's not like—" Chiron chuckled. "It hardly matters. Annabeth is very territorial about her friends, in case you haven't noticed. She was quite worried about you, and now that you're back, I think she suspects where you were marooned." I met his eyes, and I knew Chiron had guessed about Calypso. It was hard to hide anything from a guy who's been training heroes for about 3,000 years. He's pretty much seen it all. "We won't dwell on your choices," Chiron said. "You came back. That is what matters. Tell that to Annabeth." Chiron smiled. "In the morning I will have Argus take the 2 of you into Manhattan. You might stop by your mother's, Percy. She is understandably distraught. My heart skipped a beat. All that time on Calypso's island, I'd never even thought about how my mom would feel. She'd think I was dead. She'd be devastated. What was wrong with me that I haven't even considered that? Charon, I said, what about Grover and Tyson? Do you think... I don't know, my boy. Charon gazed into the empty fireplace. Juniper is quite distressed. All her branches are turning yellow. The Council of Cloven Elders has revoked Grover's searcher's license in absentia. Assuming he comes back alive, they will force him into a shameful exile. He sighed. Grover and Tyson are very resourceful, however. We can still hope. I shouldn't have let them run off. Grover has his own destiny, and Tyson was brave to follow him. You would know if Grover was in mortal danger, don't you think? I suppose, the empathy link, but there is something else I should tell you, Percy, he said. Actually, 2 unpleasant things. Great. Chris Rodriguez, our guest. I remembered what I'd seen in the basement. Clarice trying to talk to him while he babbled about the labyrinth. Is he dead? Not yet, Charon said grimly, but he's much worse. He's in the infirmary now, too weak to move. I had to order Clarice back to a regular schedule because she was at his bedside consistently. He doesn't respond to anything. He won't take food or drink. None of my medicines help. He has simply lost the will to live. I shuddered. Despite all the ruins I'd had with Clarice, I felt horrible for her. She tried so hard to help him, and now that I'd been in the labyrinth, I could understand why it had been so easy for the ghost of Minos to drive Chris mad. If I'd been wandering around down there alone, without my friend's help, I'd never made it out alive. I'm sorry to say, Charon continued, the other news is less pleasant still. Quintus has disappeared. Disappeared? How? 3 nights ago, he slipped into the labyrinth. Juniper watched him go. It appears you might have been right about him. He's a spy for Luke. I told Charon about the Triple G Ranch, how Quintus had brought his scorpions there and Jaren had been supplying Cronus' army. It can't be a coincidence, Charon said heavily. So many betrayals. I had hoped Quintus would prove a friend. It seems my judgment was bad. What about Mrs. O'Leary? I asked. The hellhound is still in the arena. It won't let anyone approach. I do not have the heart to force it into a cave or destroy it. Quintus won't just leave her. As I said, Percy, we seem to have been wrong about him. Now you should prepare yourself for this morning. You and Annabeth still have much to do. I left him in his wheelchair, staring sadly into the fireplace. I wondered how many times he sat there, waiting for heroes that never came back. Before dinner, I stopped by the sword arena. Sure enough, Mrs. O'Leary was curled up in an enormous black furry mound in the middle of the stadium, chewing half-heartedly on the head of a warrior dummy. When she saw me, she barked and came pounding toward me. I thought it was Demi. I just had time to say, "Whoa!" before she bowed me over and started licking my face. Now, usually, being the son of Poseidon and all, I only get wet if I want to, but my powers apparently did not extend to dog saliva, because I got pretty good bath. "Whoa, girl!" I yelled. "Can't breathe! Let me up!" Eventually, I managed to get her off me. I scratched her ears and found her an extra gigantic dog biscuit. "Where's your master?" I asked her. "How could he just leave you, huh?" She whimpered like she wanted to know that, too. I was ready to believe Quintus was an enemy, but still I couldn't understand why he'd leave Mrs. O'Leary behind. If there was one thing I was sure of, it was that he really cared for his mecha-dog. I was thinking about that and toweling this dog spit off my face when a girl's voice said, "You're lucky she didn't bite your head off." Clarice was standing at the other end of the arena with her sword and shield. "Came here to practice yesterday," she grumbled. "Dog tried to chew me up." "She's an intelligent dog," I said. "Funny." She walked toward us. Mrs. O'Leary growled, but I patted her on the head and calmed her down. "Stupid hellhound," Clarice said. "Not going to keep me from practicing." "I heard about Chris," I said. "I'm sorry." Clarice paced a circle around the arena. When she came to the nearest dummy, she attacked vigorously, chopping its head off with a single blow and driving her sword through its guts. She pulled the sword out and kept walking. "Yeah, well, sometimes things go wrong." Her voice was shaky. "Heroes get hurt. They die. And the monsters just keep coming back." She picked up a javelin and threw it across the arena. It nailed a dummy straight between the eye holes of its helmet. She had called Chris a hero, like he had never gone over to the Titan side. It reminded me of the way Annabeth sometimes talked about Luke. I decided not to bring that up. "Chris was brave," I said. I hope he gets better." She glared at me as if I was her next target. Mrs. O'Leary growled. "Do me a favor," Clarice told me. "Yeah, sure. If you find Daedalus, Don't trust him. Don't ask him for help. Just kill him, Clarice. Because anyone who can make something like the Labyrinth, Percy, that person is evil. Plain evil. For a second, she reminded me of Yurton, the coward, her much older half-brother. She had the same hard look in her eyes, as if she'd been used for the past 2,000 years and she was getting tired of it. She sheathed her sword. Practice time is over for now. On. It's for real. That night, I slept in my own bunk, and for the first time since Calypso's island, dreams found me. I was in a king's courtroom, a big white chamber with marble columns and a wooden throne. Sitting on it was a plump guy with curly red hair and a crown of laurels. At his side stood 3 girls who looked like his daughters. They all had his red hair and were dressed in blue robes. The doors creaked open and a herald announced, "Minos, King of Crete!" I tensed, but the man on the throne just smiled at his daughters. I can't wait to see the expression on his face. Minos, the royal creep himself, swept into the room. He was so tall and serious he made the other guy kind of look silly. Minos' pointed beard had gone gray. He looked thinner than the last time I dreamed of him, and his sandals were spattered with mud, the same cruel light shine in his eyes. He bowed stiffly to the man on the throne. "King Cocalus, I understand you have solved my little riddle." Calculus smiled. "Hardly, little Minos, especially when you advertise across the world that you are willing to pay 1,000 gold talents to the one who can solve it. Is the offer genuine?" "Is the offer genuine?" Minos clapped his hands. 2 buff guys walked in, struggling with a big wooden crate. They set it at Cocalus's feet and opened it. Stacks of gold bars glittered. It had to be worth like a gazillion dollars. Cocalus whispered appreciatively, "You must have bankrupted your kingdom for such a reward, my friend." "That is not your concern." Cocalus shrugged. "The riddle was quite simple, really. One of my retainers solved it." "Father," one of the girls mourned. She looked like the oldest, a little taller than her sisters. Cocalus ignored her. He took a spiral seashell from the folds of his robe. A silver string had been threaded through it, so it hung like a huge bead on a necklace. Minos stepped forward and took the shell. "One of your retainers, you say? How did he thread the string without breaking the shell?" "He used an ant, if you can believe it, tied a silk string to the little creature and coaxed it through the shell by putting honey on the far end." "Ingenious man," Minos said. "Oh, indeed. My daughter's tutor, they are quite fond of him." Minos' eyes turned cold. "I would be careful of that." I wanted to warn Cacalus. "Don't trust this guy! Throw him in the dungeon with some man-eating lions or something." But the red-headed king just chuckled. "Not to worry, Minos. My daughters are wise beyond their years. Now about my gold, yes," Minos said. "But you see, the gold is for the man who solved the riddle, and there can be only one such man. You are harboring Daedalus." Cocalus shifted uncomfortably on his throne. "How's that you know his name?" "He is a thief," Minos said. "He once worked in my court, Cocalus. He turned my own daughter against me. He helped a super make a fool of me in my own palace, and then he escaped justice. I've been pursuing him for 10 years. I knew nothing of this, but I have offered the man my protection. He has been a most useful. I offer you a choice," Minos said. "Turn over the fugitive to me, and this gold is yours, or risk making me your enemy. You do not want Crete as your enemy." Cocalus paled. I thought it was stupid for him to look so scared in the middle of his own throne room. He should have summoned his army or something. Minos only has 2 guards, but Cocalus just sat there sweating on his throne. "Father," his oldest daughter said, "you can't silence Alia." Cocalus twisted his beard. He looked again at the glittering gold. "This pains me, Minos. The gods do not love a man who breaks his own oath of hospitality. The gods do not love those who harbor criminals either." Cocalus nodded. "Very well. You shall have your man in chains." "Father!" Alia said again. Then she caught herself and changed her voice to a sweeter tone. At least let us feast our guest first. After his long journey, he should be treated to a hot bath, new clothes, and a decent meal. I would be honored to draw the bath myself." She smiled prettily at Minos, and the old god grunted. "I suppose a bath will not be amiss." He looked at Cocalus. "I will see you at dinner, my lord, with the prisoner." This way, your majesty," said Alia. She and her sisters led Minos out of the chamber. I followed them into a bath chamber decorated with mosaic tiles. Steam filled the air. A running water faucet poured hot water into the tub. Alia and her sisters filled it with rose petals and something that must have been ancient Greek, Mr. Bubble, because soon the water was covered with multicolored foam. The girls stood aside as Minos dropped his ropes and slipped into the bath. He smiled. An excellent bath. Thank you, my dears. The journey has been long indeed. You have been chasing your prey 10 years, my lord? Aaliyah said, batting her eyelashes. You must be very determined. Oh, never forget adept, Minos grinned. Your father was wise to agree to my demands. Oh, indeed, my lord, Aaliyah said. I thought she was laying on her flattery pretty thick, but the old guy was eating it up. Aaliyah's sisters trickled scented oil over the king's head. You know, my lord, Aaliyah said, Dallas thought you would come. He thought the riddle might be a trap, but he couldn't resist it. Then he frowned. Daedalus spoke to you about me? Yes, my lord. He's a bad man, princess. My own daughter fell under his spell. Do not listen to him. He is a genius, Aaliyah said, and he believes a woman is just as smart as a man. He was the first to ever teach us as if we had minds of our own. Perhaps your daughter felt the same way. Minos tried to sit up, but Aaliyah's sisters pushed him back into the water. Aaliyah came up behind him. She held 3 tiny orbs in her palm. At first I thought they were bath beads, but she threw them in the water, and the beads sprouted bronze threads that began wrapping around the king, tying him up at the ankles, binding his wrists to his sides, circling his neck. Even though I hated Minos, it was pretty horrible to wash. He thrashed and cried out, but the girls were much stronger. Soon he was helpless, lying in the bath with his chin just above the water. The bronze strands were still wrapped around him like a cocoon, tightening across his body. What do you want? Minos demanded. Why do you do this? Aaliyah smiled. Daedalus has been kind to us, your majesty, and I do not like you threatening our father. You tell Daedalus, Minos growled. You tell him I will hound him even after death. If there's any justice in the underworld, my soul will haunt him for eternity. Brave words, your majesty. Aye, Aaliyah said. I wish you luck finding your justice in the underworld. And with that, the bronze threads wrapped around Minos' face, making him a bronze mummy. The door of the bathhouse opened. Daedalus stepped in, carrying a traveler's bag. He trimmed his hair short. His beard was pure white. He looked frail and sad, but he reached down and touched the mummy's forehead. The threads unraveled and sank to the bottom of the tub. There was nothing inside him. It was as if King Minos had just dissolved. A painless death, Daedalus mused. More than he deserved. Thank you, my princess. Aaliyah hugged him. You cannot stay here, teacher. When our father finds out... Yes, Daedalus said. I fear I brought you trouble. Oh, do not worry for us. Father will be happy enough taking that old man's gold, and Crete is a very long way away. But he will blame you for Minos' death. You must flee to somewhere safe. Somewhere safe, the old man repeated. For years I fled from kingdom to kingdom, looking for somewhere safe. I fear Minos told the truth. Death will not stop him from hounding me. There is no place under the sun that will harbor me, once word for this crime gets out. Then where will you go? Aaliyah said. A place I swore never to enter again, Daedalus said. My prison may be my only sanctuary. I do not understand, Aaliyah said. It's best you do not. But what part of the underworld? One of her sisters asked. Terrible judgment will await you. Every man must die. Perhaps, Daedalus said. Then he brought a scroll from his traveling bag. The same old scroll I seen in my last dream, with his nephew's notes. Or perhaps not.